Mercury's going to trine Uranus, but it's going to be kind of like bzzz. Have you done your loyalty check-in today? This morning, while I was in that hypnagogic state, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, that place in between waking and sleeping and waking in the morning, I had a dream about check-ins, about like digital IDs, like your photo on your driver's license, that's a picture you take once. But what if digital IDs were like a system where you have to check in daily or weekly or monthly, and maybe the frequency with which you have to check in and take a face selfie differs according to your status in society. Like, I guess if you're on parole, you gotta check in every 15 minutes. JP Morgan and MasterCard are piloting biometric payment options because it's more secure. John Miller, the CEO of Pop ID, which is partnered with JP Morgan, says he thinks this will be a breakthrough year for pay-by-face technology. So you've heard of retinal scanning for like getting into high security areas in big budget Hollywood movies. But something that retinal scanning is starting to do is predict diseases. For instance, diabetic retinopathy. Apparently you can observe symptoms of diabetes before they show up anywhere more obvious through scanning the retina. Engineers at the University of Washington have developed AI headphones that let the wearer like choose a person to listen to in a crowded room, and then the headphones can like enroll that person into the headphones and they'll cancel out all the other noise except that. So like someone in the room is wearing headphones and they can listen to just you. We live in a time of wonders. From the Captain Obvious news desk, your Wi-Fi router doubles as an Apple AirTag. Specifically, if you have Starlink, then you're just being tracked all the time by satellites. But Apple and Google use Wi-Fi in addition to like cellular data to track your location. So if you didn't know that already about Wi-Fi, now you know. Julian Assange recently, this past week, won a high court victory against getting extradited to the United States. And around this time in 2012, so June of 2012, Julian Assange was granted asylum at the Embassy of Ecuador in London. And Jupiter was also like at the very last degrees of Taurus during that time. So this came out, he won this court victory 12 years later at the Jupiter return, Ecuador granting him asylum in London. So the EPA says that it will step up enforcement to address, quote, critical vulnerabilities within the water sector. And you've heard me talk about things like Splunk and Palantir, which can monitor the security of large systems. They do it for big companies, but they can't do it for the United States. And if I'm missing something about the functionality of those companies and what they can do for US critical infrastructure, let me know. But anyway, it doesn't matter because they're going to put it all on blockchain and things really escalate from here. I've made a whole other video about it that you can watch. Automakers are being grilled by US lawmakers over sharing connected car data with the police. This is like a headline that is serving the digital ID narrative, because then cars can't share your data without permission, but you'll be compelled to share that if you need to get approval for anything. And yeah, that's what I think that's about, but I could be wrong. And then also, California is like pushing through a bill for age verification on adult websites, which obviously is good. I mean, it's horrifying what people can access as children. So, yeah, but that is also a part of the digital, like that's what that will be. It will be digital ID, because first digital ID is coming for healthcare and education. So like children and another thing that I talk about in my special report video that I made that you should go watch. And robot dogs. The Marines are testing robot dogs that are armed with rifles that are aimed by artificial intelligence. This tweet is a part of a thread, and I'm calling it tweets. In the future, I guess I will be dating myself by calling them tweets, but this guy's basically saying what I keep saying about blockchain. Like, blockchain is not decentralized. The ledger, how the data is stored, is decentralized, which makes it indestructible and permanent. But he's like bristling at how Ethereum is like doing a frog in hot water thing, where it's like eventually it's just going to look exactly like traditional finance. And Vitalik Buterin, who has an Aquarius stellium. I'm only on the fringes of this blockchain world, but the blockchain world is becoming the whole world soon. So you better get your butt to the fringes with me and watch my token engineering video. He issued a blog post addressing all this, and I tried to read it, and I'm like a pretty smart person, and I'm pretty good at figuring things out, and I didn't understand it, really. It just seemed like pandering and technical language, but he has a lot of like weight on his shoulders. So, and he is probably, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he is trying to do good here, even though these technologies are not rebellious technologies, they're establishment technologies. But like, young man with like a lot of responsibility. So anyway, it's interesting that all that came out right on the heels of the SEC approving an Ethereum exchange traded fund. Speaking of that, there was like a flare up of the GameStop meme stocks thing, and one of them was AMC. Did you know that AMC institutional investors are BlackRock and Vanguard? Unfortunately, hopes for sustainable jet fuel are not realistic. So soon you're not going to be able to fly on planes unless you have a NetJets subscription. People who are deceased who had Steam games, those are apparently going to be stuck in legal limbo. And this is very important. This is an important discussion for like digital assets moving forward, because so many things will be digital assets. The title to your house will be an NFT. Your badge for completing a continuing education course will be an NFT. Your diploma will be an NFT. I can't think of anything else right now. Anyway, so the idea of what happens to your digital assets when you die is like needs to be talked about now. And also I think that's interesting because like in the realm of like you will own nothing, you're gonna rent everything. So like your subscriptions, it's what I was talking about in my Jupiter and Gemini video, which you should watch, about like commerce and holding wealth. So your life will cost the same, if not more, but you won't be like investing in things and like buying them for life. You'll be subscribing to them for life. And then you can't pass on those stores of wealth to your descendants. This is a headline from 2022. Coup prediction algorithms are here to save and or destroy democracy. The ability to forecast social unrest is something governments have desired for a long time, and data researchers are helping them get there. So this headline talks about an organization called CoupCast, which comes out of the University of Central Florida, and it uses historical data and machine learning to analyze the likelihood that a violent transition of power will take place in one country or the other. Isn't that interesting? Predictive analytics to predict coups. What happens when... So Mark Zuckerberg has assembled a team of tech executives for an AI advisory council. And I think last week there was a thing saying Meta helped with a coalition against scams. And also Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, and Meta started a thing called the Symbiosis Coalition, and they're like a carbon reduction coalition. So that's like, making nature better stuff, controlling nature. We need to control it because it's out of control because we're ruining it. So we don't need to like control, we need to monitor all of nature. So, and everything's going to be spatial computing through ubiquitous sensing. So we need to put smart dust in everything to track everything. We need to put it in the dirt in the forests. It'll grow through the trees so we can track the trees. Look up IXO blockchain. It will be a Vimeo video. And it's also going to be in your gut microbiome, probably. That's Uranus and Cancer. So after 2032, that'll be like loud and proud. If the world is recognizable, if there's any computing happening. And I mean, at least until 2036, there should be computing happening. Anyway, so there's a thing about transparency, which I will quote from the Symbiosis website, quote, provide details on project activities that enable independent evaluation of successes, for example, overperformance, and failures, for example, overcrediting. So the transparency part is like the monitoring all of nature part, and like having like NF trees. That was a thing in 2021. And proof of care. So the metaverse is our new government, and the metaverse is our new economy, and the metaverse is social media. And you can bet your buttons, this is the second time I've used that in this video, our new government, which are giant technology businesses who run little shires for us to interact with each other, that are becoming our new government and our new economy, that's what the metaverse is, which is social media. I know I'm repeating myself. You can bet they have algorithms that can forecast social unrest. And so all these coalitions are being created to be like, look, we're trying to do good here. I'm not saying that like Mark Zuckerberg just like woke up and on his like Apple Watch it said, hey, there's a danger of there being a coup, so you better get involved with this carbon coalition with Microsoft and Salesforce right now. But that's how I'm connecting those stories. Meta is a form of governance for us. You live your life on Instagram and you're subject to their community guidelines. Mercury is really busy this week. The messenger of the gods is busy. What that means for you is like information, inspiration, since Jupiter is now ruled by Mercury, inspiration by information, and deliveries, and local travel. So if you wake up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m. Pacific time, the moon is trining Uranus. And nothing much. Like that's like a weird start to the day, or maybe like you're woken up early or you wake up really early, and then the moon enters Aquarius. So immediately it's trining Jupiter, and then it's trining Pluto, and these are like previews for Sunday when Jupiter trines Pluto. But you can consider Jupiter to be trining Pluto on Monday. It's just not exact yet, but it's fully underway. And also a part of Monday's preview of Sunday, or like Monday is like truly setting the tone for the week, because like the moon is the activator of the zodiac, and it is touching Jupiter and it is touching Pluto, which is the main like big planetary astrological signature that's happening. So the other thing that is a part of this preview is Mercury sextile Saturn. So this is the opening sextile of Mercury's conjunction with Saturn in Pisces back on February 25th. So during that time, Mercury was like reporting to Saturn for duty and doing the annual report and totally working for Saturn, but also being Mercury in Pisces, maybe being a little artistic or vague about it. Now, in this Mercury-Saturn story, this is like the messenger of the gods and how the messenger of the gods works for authority. So you might see like another type of announcement from authority, except this time Mercury has a new job. Mercury is not working for Saturn right now. Mercury is working for Venus. So what does that mean? Like Mercury has something to say about feeling good and also like scenario planning and planning for the future. And this check-in or announcement is like a little more solidified and less imaginative than Mercury's connection with Saturn back in late February. And then also late at night on Monday, the moon trines Venus in Gemini. Monday overall could be like positive, buzzing, energetic, and serious and practical and informative. On Tuesday, nothing much happens. Like one hand knows what the other hand is doing. The moon is trining the sun and it's waning down. But also we have these connections to Thursday. Tuesday doesn't have a lot of aspect. It starts off in the wee hours, moon trine sun, and then in the wee hours at night, turning into Wednesday, the moon squares Mercury. So that's Mercury in Taurus being squared by moon, activator of the zodiac, in Aquarius with Pluto. You need to sign up for a digital ID to get your UBI, but there's something you need to do in Aquarius that's like some like detached form of self-care or taking care of business. But Mercury has an announcement, like you have to like, what about the future? Something that feels good in terms of like the utopian ideal. Or maybe it doesn't even feel good. Maybe you're strong-armed into it because Pluto's there. But Mercury will be like, gosh darn it, look at the different scenarios I put together. And what do you think about things that could go wrong? We need to make sure that we don't run out of supplies. The moon also squares Uranus because Mercury is applying to Uranus. So this is like a preview for the next day, Thursday. So Mercury conjoins Uranus on Thursday. However, you might feel this on Wednesday with like in a grating way. The other things that happen on Wednesday are this Mars signature. The moon is sextiling Mars, which you might feel that on Tuesday also. And then Mars conjoins Chiron. I don't talk about Chiron much, but if you could use some healing by embarrassment in the sign of Aries, that's going to bring something up. It's going to speak to, Chiron was the only celestial body in our solar system that Mercury conjoined 3 times during its retrograde through Aries, which was this past April. So now Mars, Lord of Aries, like the boss, is back from business trip, from military campaign, and is now home. And maybe there might be some like violent conclusion to that Mercury and Aries story. I hate saying that because that's not good for me. Nervous laughter. Wednesday is kind of like maybe ripping off a band-aid. In the evening, the moon, which is aspecting all this, pieces out into Pisces and chills. So early in the morning on Thursday, the moon squares Venus, which could be fun, but there will be like a tension between like wanting to chill and wanting to chat. And you might also feel that Wednesday night. So yeah, Thursday, you wake up in the morning, you want to take a bath instead of a shower, but your phone's blowing up. At night on Thursday, Mercury conjoins Uranus. What could go wrong? One thing that's interesting about this Mercury conjunction with Uranus is that the moon is waning. It's the last quarter, so it doesn't have a lot of light. As a contrasting example, COVID lockdowns in March of 2020 came right off that March 9th full moon in Virgo. So this thing happened and there was a lot of energy to be given to it. Full of light and full of energy. Overflowing if it's a full moon. So this Mercury is going to trine Uranus, but it's going to be kind of like bzz. And you might have felt this like just over this week and even last week. It might have been more exciting and like innovative feeling last week when the moon had more light. So this is Mercury conjoining Uranus in the last part of Taurus, which has a lot to do with like preparing for disaster. Watch my special report, by the way. Preparing for disaster, being afraid of bad things happening. And also like you can tend your crops all you want and take really good care of them, but if there's a drought, then you're up the creek and you also did all you could. So the end of Taurus is kind of that place in like where you don't want to run out of supplies. You want to keep ordering more before you're even close to being out. And Uranus in this part of Taurus concerns me. The Uranian manifesting through this place can like make fears about things like sudden changes in what you're used to having stability in, bring those fears alive. It can also be something good, like Uranus isn't necessarily benefic or malefic, and right now Uranus is working for Venus in Gemini with Jupiter trining Pluto. And then also late at night the moon conjoins Saturn in Pisces. It's like sad face. I guess I don't like that. The moon conjoining Saturn at night after the Mercury-Jupiter thing. Sorry, the Mercury-Uranus thing. Friday is busy in a chill way. Moon, the activator of the zodiac, after having conjoined Saturn and being sad at night, then sextiles Uranus. So that's interesting, potentially beneficial. But the beginning of Friday is busy, but in a chill way. And maybe busy in like a can't like choose a direction or kind of like meandering. You might be really distracted by what Jupiter in Gemini is doing, which is inspiring you with wealths of information. And the second half of Friday is busy in an aggro way, or maybe just an energetic way. The moon moves into Aries, and Mars is in Aries, so it's extra vigorous. We're feeling extra vigorous. That could be extra argumentative, potentially, but Mercury's not aspecting Mars, so maybe not. Maybe it's just like it doesn't feel good, you're annoyed, you're aggravated. And the moon sextiles Jupiter, and the moon sextiles Pluto. So it's Monday, Jupiter, Pluto. Friday, Jupiter, Pluto. Saturday, I'll talk about in a minute. Sunday, Jupiter, Pluto goes exact. So Friday and Monday are like echoes of the future. Or they might just be when that aspect manifests, because the moon is the activator. So when something goes exact, especially if they're slow moving planets, that's a feeling you'll like, feel it coming, feel the tension mounting. But if it's a trine, you'll feel the confluence growing stronger. And then afterwards, like the more distance you get with slow moving planetary aspects, the more you'll be like, oh, that's what that was. Or like, oh, this is what's happening now. Monday, you get a hit of it. Friday, you get a hit of it, Jupiter, Pluto. Saturday, nothing much happens in the morning. And like most of the day, you have the moon applying to a sextile with Venus, which is nice and also energetic, like chatty, active. It's like a walk and talk, or a run and talk, or a drag race and talk. And also the moon conjoins the North Node. It's a little extreme after the moon conjoins the North Node. On Sunday afternoon, it's going to conjoin Mars. Saturday starts out nice, and then it gets it becomes a bit much. And then Sunday, the moon conjoins Mars in the afternoon, evening. But then a couple hours after that, the Jupiter-Pluto thing goes exact. By that time, you might start to know what that's about. I'll talk about Jupiter-Pluto in a minute, but I want to go through the rest of what happens on Sunday. Mercury sextiles Neptune. Mercury sextiles Saturn at the beginning of the week, about concretizing things and saying no and boundaries and restriction, and also making things real. Neptune is kind of not any of that. Saturn-Neptune stuff, especially when it moves into Aries next year, is the metaverse. It's like the metaverse becoming our new government. Uranus and Gemini sextiling that will be the metaverse becoming our new economy. And Aries, Uranus and Aries, 2010 through 2017-ish. That was social media becoming more integrated into our lives and our identities. So Mercury sextiling Saturn in Pisces and Neptune in Pisces, while this Jupiter-Pluto thing is happening, is interesting brackets for what's to come. I feel like this week has a lot of interesting information about the next era. And if you keep a diary this week of every single thing that happens every day, and you look back at it in 2032, you'll be like, wow, that week had a lot of information for me. So there are many announcements, because Mercury is sextiling Saturn, conjoining Uranus, and sextiling Neptune. These are slow-moving planets, so there are announcements about things that have wider implications. And then at the end of Sunday, the moon moves into Taurus. So we start the following week with a Taurus moon, which is complicated because it's squaring Pluto and Uranus is there. So about Jupiter trining Pluto, also watch my special report. That's on various aspects with Pluto from Gemini coming up, and how what's going on around right now, how that speaks to the future of money and infrastructure. And a bit about where we are in the cycle. Jupiter conjoined Pluto in April and November of 2020, so that was an important time and had to do with transfers of wealth. And then Jupiter sextiled Pluto. This was Jupiter in Pisces sextiling Pluto at the very end of Capricorn on May 3rd of 2022, and Jupiter squared Pluto May 17th, 2023. So we have 2020, that's a pretty significant Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. And there's a lot of stock market stuff where selling off of stocks allegedly right before the lockdowns, when the market then tanked, and then a lot of buying it back on the cheap, and then experiencing lots of prosperity for people in the know, allegedly. So this particular Jupiter-Pluto 12-year cycle has a lot to do with stores of wealth and how our whole world is changing drastically. This Jupiter trine Pluto that's occurring on Sunday. We will have maybe started to see what that's about starting last Sunday, the 26th. So it's immediately applying very closely to Pluto. But both Gemini and Aquarius are signs of people. So I see a lot of being very inspired and empowered, made effective by that inspiration and empowerment around something having to do with social influence, or collaborating with people, something about the collective. And again, earlier in the week, the rulers of Aquarius and Gemini conferred with each other. That's Mercury sextiling Saturn on Monday. So everyone's on the same page for this Jupiter-Pluto situation to keep going And there's also like willingness to undertake large projects or like excitement around that, and that will have to do with people, or it will have to do with like technological innovation, because Gemini and Aquarius are like so tech. So the thing I said in my Jupiter in Gemini video about we're going to get really excited about technology, and something that technology is right now is like Web3 stuff. The technology for the masses. Obviously there's a lot of other like innovative technologies going on, but Web3 is about technology for the people, and it's framed as like rebellious and freedom-y, but really it's establishment and about cybernetics, which cybernetics is controlling the whole situation and all the people in it. I talk a lot of garbage about blockchain. That doesn't mean like you're not going to be on it, and it doesn't mean you can't have a wonderful life having like blockchain IDs and doing token signals intelligence. It's just what's happening. It's not necessary, but it's happening. Like, it's necessary in that this is what's happening. It's not going to go any other way. They're just going to try to put everything on blockchain, including your microbiome. But that comes later. This particular Jupiter trining Pluto from Gemini, trining Pluto in Aquarius, it makes me think about, there's some quote that's like, you can get somewhere by yourself, but together you can go further. It's very like collaborative, and very much like the spirit of it will be about positive change. Pluto corrupts. Pluto is corruption. So there's definitely also going to be some corruption that happened, and we're not going to talk about it. And there will be both. There'll be great undercurrents of power, the wind in the sails for projects that have to do with social influence and people doing something together, creating change together. Or like you, depending on where Jupiter and Pluto are in your chart, it'll be like you will be empowered by the gods to like create effective, great change. Take on a big project. There'll probably be other people involved. This is not like a solitude signature, unless it's in your 12th house. Then maybe it is. You're alone, but you're like chatting with the private Discord. The positive things, it's enthusiasm. You have the potential to be effective in those areas of life that like Jupiter rules, where Jupiter and Pluto in your natal chart, houses that coincide with Aquarius and Gemini. You have the ability to have like great stores of willpower welling up from the underworld and expanded by the gods. It's like both. You get the power of the sky god and the power of the underworld together. Leverage, but it's social. There's gonna be like your mindset around it is gonna be one of improvement. And also the mindset around like Pluto in Aquarius being corrupt and the power structures is gonna still be one of improvement, and then maybe like not serve everybody all that well in the long run, which you'll see like later in 2032. Exciting time, like you're like breathing in a magical gas that you're like high on a magical gas. It's like nitrous oxide this week. Just be careful. That could mess you up, but it could also induce flow states or something. I was just reading the book. I read 3 books in a row. I read Stealing Fire, and then I read the 2 books that those guys wrote, because Stealing Fire is written by 2 guys. The Art of Impossible, which was about like peak performance and flow states. Then I read Recapture the Rapture, which is about like altered states of consciousness and the collective. Those are all really interesting. But in one of them, somewhere, they talked about nitrous oxide and the states that it induces. And that makes me think of this Jupiter-Pluto, especially with Venus there. So have fun. Watch where you point that thing. Be wary of authority figures giving you serving utopian ideals. And remember, your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.